What do you think of when you imagine a little portable radio? If you're anything like me, you probably picture something like this. It's a Sanyo RP5050. It's rectangular, has a lovely circular dial indicator, a telescoping antenna, a lanyard, and it's more or less the size of a Walkman. I like this little radio, but it's common in the sense that it looks like a portable radio. What I want to show you guys today are 4 examples of radios that we found that have less, let's call it, conventional shapes. So stick around, because this is why estate sales are so much fun for me. This first one I want to show you is an AM radio from 1983. It's steam powered. And by steam, of course, I mean a 9-volt battery. It's a locomotive AM radio. It says so on the box. It was made in Hong Kong and apparently by someone who doesn't really care which way numbers go. The little plaques here on the sides are both upside down. And I'm not fixing it. I like that about it. I think it's charming. It has a single speaker in the back, and on the top are the power volume knob and the tuner knob. It still works, and we still have the original box it came in, although admittedly the plastic has seen better days. And I will be opening all of these up and showing the insides at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. The thing I find kind of weird about this, other than the fact that it's shaped like a locomotive, is the battery cover. It doesn't have a screw or a hinge or clip or anything like that. It's just a little piece of black plastic that you just kind of shove in the hole and hope that it doesn't fall out. It's clearly meant to be a novelty that doesn't move. And that is perfectly fine. A locomotive AM radio. That's a little unusual. All right, next, since we're on the subject of planes, trains, and automobiles, I have 2 cars. The first is this red 1957 Chevy Corvette convertible. Now, I know this is going to come as a huge surprise to all of you, but it's actually a radio. Shocking, I know. Under the hood, instead of a 283 cubic inch V8, you have a power and volume control and a tuner knob. But unlike the previous one, this one has AM and FM on a little switch in the front. They clearly expected you to listen to FM more than AM because the tuner only shows an FM scale. It rolls pretty well for a radio. That is a sentence I never thought I would say. And the doors open. Something I find funny is that when the doors are open, they made no attempt to hide the wires, which, again, that's fine with me. It's not meant to be a high-end product. I also don't think this one's that old. I found one that matched this one online, and the bottom of the box had a UPCA barcode printed on the bottom of it, which wasn't adopted until 1974, although that doesn't date this that old. Now, the other one is this little metal car. It's not die-cast, but it still has a pretty decent build quality. Although I'm not entirely certain what kind of car it's meant to be. I assumed it was a 1917 Model T runabout based on the shape of the canopy, but then other details don't really match. Regardless, it is an effective little radio, and it has a relic from the Cold War on it. On the tuner dial, there's a little marker at 6:40 a.m. and at 12:40 a.m. Those are civil defense stations that were required by law to be printed on every radio sold in the US between 1953 and 1963. There's actually a great video on the channel Our Own Devices about the CONELRAD civil defense system. I recommend watching that after watching this video. I'll put a link in the description. For our purposes though, those markers are helpful in figuring out how old a radio is, at least to some degree. The details of the car itself are a bit simple, but the top goes up and down, and the best part is how you get to the batteries. You actually unscrew the starter crank, which is not intuitive, especially considering the trunk is plastic and looks like it should come off. But, at least with this little one, the dates are right side up. Now finally, we have this unusual little desktop radio. It's a pen holder. Radio. AM only, and it's really simple. It has that vintage executive black and gold look, which would be at home on the desk of any CEO. I don't know the date on this one either, but there are a few clues. First of all, it's a very heavy old style of plastic. The screws on the bottom are flatheads, it's only AM, and the dial, although you can't really see it without pulling the thing apart, has the civil defense markers on it. And don't worry, we will pull these open when I'm done with this one. It's powered by a 9-volt battery. Unfortunately, while it does work, it's really quiet and needs a little bit of TLC to get it back to the original volume. I plan on recapping it eventually, but that is a project for another day. For now, it remains a cool set piece. All right, so there we have it. 4 strangely shaped novelty radios found at 4 separate estate sales. It is remarkable what people have lying around their houses. Do you guys have any non-radio shaped radios at your houses? Ones that are shaped like, I don't know, a couch or a palm tree or a crocodile or something? Okay, alligator. Whatever. Let me know in the comments. Y'all usually have some pretty cool stuff, and I love just reading about it. But let me at least turn each of these on and let you hear the tuning. I just have to go quick because I can't stop on any music. Copyright and all that. So let's take a look.
Case, even though I've never believed he was going to LA. The Dodgers just a year. But Ohtani on California, Ohtani already, has a big reliable, trustworthy water heater service for over 35 years. Nobody has installed more water heaters.
Now, because I know what you're really here for, and also because I know I need to fill for time, we're going to pull each one of these guys open and look at the internals. I always like seeing how they've decided to lay out the parts to fit in a strange form factor like this. I imagine fitting everything into a locomotive is a little more challenging than fitting it into a rectangle. Let's open up the pen holder radio first. To do that, you just remove these screws here. It's missing a fourth screw. Unfortunately, that's the nature of secondhand stuff. It's not always perfect. Now, I've had this one apart once before. That's how I figured out it had the Civil Defense Station markers on it. It's too bad, too, that you can only see them when it's pulled apart. I really doubt that they meant it that way. Like I said earlier, I'd like to recap this one eventually when I have some extra free time, and I will show you guys the results when I'm done. Next, let's see the inside of the Corvette. On the bottom is the battery compartment. 3 AA's. I always try to take the batteries out before I open anything just in case. Then to get it open, you just remove these 4 screws. Then you can just lift the shell off. That's how real cars work too, I think. What I find remarkable is that you can see how cheaply and hastily this was manufactured, and yet it still sounds clear, which I suspect probably comes down to it being so much newer than the other 3. Let's open the little Model T next. First, let's talk about the trunk though. Remember how I said it was the only plastic panel? There's actually a good reason for that. Can you guess what's under here? It's the antenna. Wouldn't really do a whole lot of good if it was enclosed in a metal box. There are 4 screws on the bottom. Pull the batteries out first, then undo the screws on the bottom. The little steps on the side are made of rubber, which has hardened over the years and made it a little bit harder to get the chassis apart. The board is attached to the bottom panel. They've used a little piece of cardboard to separate the battery holder from the circuit board. Also, why are antenna loops always sticky? I can guess, but maybe one of you guys know the specifics of why and can tell me in the comments. I've always wondered. Finally, let's open up the locomotive radio. I don't want to pull this one completely apart, but you can see most of the radio hardware just by removing this little screw at the top and the 2 in the back. Pull the battery compartment piece off and the whole panel with the speaker comes off to show the insides. The main board is all here in the back section, but the variable cap for the tuner and the volume pot are inside the boiler section, which you can see if you look in from the back. So yeah, I know that was a little different than my usual fare, but that's the fun of thrifting and going to estate sales, right? I never know what we're going to find. It could be a nice quadraphonic 8-track player, or it could be a bunch of neat little novelty radios. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, come back soon because I have a few really cool things I just recently got that I'm waiting on parts for. Hopefully they'll be here in the next couple of days. One of them is a sweet old Zenith turntable from 1965 that's in almost perfect condition. And I got it for free. Plus a weird realistic linear tracking turntable, some radio tuners, and a bunch of other cool stuff that we found, which I'm not going to tell you just yet. So if you want to see those, now is a great time to jump in because we got a bunch of cool videos coming up in the next month or so. So I'll see you next time and have a very metal holiday.